Hi, welcome to class. We're the only two right now, but the other ones will show up eventually, right? I hate my life. I hate my life. A Professor Sunreis Productions!
Hello class, Professor Sunreis here. In today's class, we're finally taking a look at my YCS Dortmund deck profile. Sadly, I only went 6-3 in day 1 and then I skipped day 2 because I'd much rather do something with my girlfriend who was going over a longer trip. So I figured I might not as well play day 2 because the likelihood of me topping is very, very slim. But overall, I still think the deck performed really, really well. And before we get into the deck profile, of course, give out a huge shout out to Santiago, the guy who got top 4 at Worlds, for helping me build the deck. And shout out to Team Bozo, especially Jan, who also played Dragonlink and got into top 32 of the YCS. We had a very, very similar build and we didn't even know each other before the tournament. So we kind of had like some gay slut dragon sex thing going on with our deck list, which was of course very, very appreciated. So without further ado, don't forget to see a pass on the subscribe button, leave some feedback down in the comment section below, and let's get right into the video. So before we go into the actual profile, let's quickly talk about the theory I had with this build. We are on a 44 card deck list, which tried to, as weird as it sounds, basically just beat everything. So we wanted to be as generic as possible, and I didn't really want to over prepare for basically anything apart from purely in the side deck, because while the main deck is super generic, it does struggle a little bit against purely, so I did side heavy for purely, but overall we just wanted to have a very generic deck because I still thought that Dragonlink had a very good spot at just being like a very strong mid-range deck which can just play against everything. Unchained in a vacuum is better, but we still have a good matchup against that, so it all was fine. My matchups, by the way, were a Chimera, one Mikanko goes second, two Unchains, a Vanadium player, a Branded player, a Fluandereese player, and I think two labs. So these were my 9 rounds of Swiss. I lost against the Chimera going first because they just always had the answer for my hand trap. I lost against the Labyrinth player because of my misplay, and I lost against the Vanadium player because I lost the die roll. And in game 3, I didn't just stalled for time. I could have just waited 5 seconds and I could have won the game, but I didn't do that. But in the end, it's all fine. The deck performed still very, very well in my opinion, especially for losing so many die rolls. For the Bystial package, 3 Rebellion, 3 Sarania. Mandatory to play now with only 1 Magnamid, 1 Drew's Worm still mandatory to play, it's insane, and 1 Baldrake. I wasn't 100% sure about Baldrake, but in the 3v3 before the event, Baldrake performed pretty well at just being a threatening role, and the value of having that in the deck felt good enough in my opinion for playing a bad extender. It's a level 6, so sometimes we can do cheeky lines, so tempo-wise this is fine, but just from a card advantage standpoint, this is not an extender you want to play with. But this was the best thing to summon off Seal, which still has some sort of disruption and puts some pressure on the opponent without bricking my deck. So I figured Baldrake might be a good card. Also, it's just a Bystial, so it's a very decent non-engine piece a lot of times against Tier, for example. Only played the Regained. Now it's mandatory to go for Regain to recycle the Magnamid every turn. So leave it in the graveyard and then you can just regain it out in the opponent's turn. So no Branded Beast in the main deck whatsoever. And just really liked how this one played. For starters, I maxed out on them. So 3 Black Metal, 3 Seyfert, and 1 Chaos Base. The consistency hit going first is very negligible, but going second, we like the Chaos Base definitely. It shows the plays were less explosive. So I did try to play my deck around being kind of stronger going first than it was before, at least just as strong. So I did go for cards which are not that crazy good going second, but I wanted to just have the power of a first deck still, and it still performed very well when going first, but more on that on the actual cards later. For the Rocket Engine, 3 Quick Launch, 2 Tracer, 1 Recharger, 1 Abs. So I did play the very minimal Rocket Engine. I decided to do that because I really respected Nibiru, and I was scared of getting hit by Nibiru while I'm Dark Locked. So actually going first, what I really wanted to do was like just Seal Masquerena pass, have the regain there. If they nip us there, we can then use the Rocket Engine afterwards to end on Seal Savage after we get nipped. So that was pretty solid in theory. So I just didn't want to play a Caliber and play a bigger Rocket Engine because I didn't really necessarily want to go for it. I was very fine with going for Levy over the Rocket Engine going first and just leave the rockets for follow-up, especially if I had 1 non-engine piece with Seal Savage, with Seal Masquerena. I felt very confident in not playing more, so I figured I just saved the space. We are on 44 cards, so it makes sense in my opinion to save that space. I would have liked to be lower. I was at a 42 card version, with only 1 Noctovision, but I decided to bump it up to 3 because going first, this card was overperforming so hard. It basically kind of acted like the Chaos Space slot, where this card just gave us so much value going first. It was unreal, and if we resolved this going first, it became super hard for the opponent to keep up. It unbricked so many hands for me. It gave Seal Pass so much stronger of a pressure just because we just had so many cards. Going second, this is of course not ideal. It's really bad against Droll, but going second because Bystials are so alive right now, this card is actually fine, at least enabling like a dark line, where we can pressure the opponent, maybe crash the dark for a levy. So that came up. The random draw going second, not nearly as good as it's going first, of course. If we draw random hand traps, it doesn't really do anything. So the going second, usually I sided out at least 1, most of the time 2, sometimes even 3. But going first, this card was the perfect main deck card in my opinion, because 50% of the time we go first, this card is then insane. Then, like the time we go second, if we have a Bystial with it and a Bystial alive, this is also a very decent card. So I was very confident in playing this in the main deck and then just siding it out for the very strong non-engine which we have in the side deck, which you can't fit in the main deck currently because the format is just so wide. So I really like this card, even though I sided it out a lot. I still stand by it. You could argue to play 42 and just cut these 2, but then I've struggled to fit in all of the non-engine. So I think this card was really, really good and it overperformed. The card which overperformed the most, by the way, was Samsara Dragon. Card is absolutely fucking goated. I think I won 3 or 4 matches, at least 3, I think 4 matches, just because I had this in the graveyard and I could use this, get back a Magnumit or like any Bystial, and then tribute over Seal effect, get like Rocket Engine, and then could do everything. The one Mikanko player, in game 3, I got Drolled. I had like a very engine heavy hand, but of course, under Drolled, there's not a lot you can do. And thanks to Samsara Dragon, I could actually do Borderland, Dissipator, Savage. Just because getting the Seal out of the deck, getting like a Tracer out of the deck with the Seal when struggling to get into that engine just really, really helps. So Samsara Dragon was absolutely goated. Also, the ability to get back a Magnumit if things go south was really, really helpful, because I didn't commit to the Rocket Engine. A lot of times I still had Dragon Ravine on the board after my turn 1, so if we got like Cosmic on the regain, or it got something happened to the regain and we couldn't get into it because we got Impermed on Rebellion, Ravine pitched Samsara at back Magnumit came up a lot as well. So this card was so good. I decided out going second, but I think this card is mandatory to play. It overperformed 100%. More one-offs, the Red MD, the Levy, and the 2 Baby Chaos Dragons, pretty standard. And then Ravine and Boot Sector. Now for non-engine, I wanted to play at least 10 non-engine in 42. We then put the deck to 44, but I still stuck with the 10 non-engine pieces to have the decent math on the normal summon. Overall, I went from like, I always wanted to have like 90%. I went down to 87% because I figured like in realistic math, the few percent chances don't really affect it too much, because we are realistically like playing 12 times 3 games, so it's 36, so it's not even something which you consider to be like a worthwhile I can't find the word, but like only 36 tries is not something you take for like serious in like any sort of statistic way. So I figured like the few percent chances shouldn't matter too much, and then don't really bricked ever, I think. Apart from, I think I bricked once, but that was because we got shifted. So we would have had plays, decent plays, but we got shifted, so we didn't do anything. 3 Nibiru, the only targeted hate I have in the main deck, just because it interacts so well with Dragon Link going first. And it's also decent against Unchained, of course, but this was more like because it's so good with Dragon Link in general. And then 3 Ash, 3 Imperm, and 1 Talents. The Talents is because we want Talents into Thrust Post side, and it's definitely main deck worthy. So these cards, in my opinion, are very, very solid to play in Dragon Link, and that is because they're super generic into the wide format. 9 hand traps is like the bare minimum you want to play. The good thing is we can default into like 2 hand traps plus engine against a lot of the combo decks, because we have one of those, and then any of the Bystials, for example against Vanadium, they work wonders in tandem. So Imperm Bystial is super good against Vanadium. So against random combo decks, we then just suddenly turned into like a very hand trap heavy list with like 6 Bystials as well, so we suddenly have 50 non-engine against them effectively. So that worked very well, and I was very fine with just playing 9 hand traps in the main deck, especially because some of them are high impactful by themselves. like Nib or Ash against Branded, and then we have Imperm, which is always super strong as well. So I really like that approach, and the non-engine definitely performed when I drew it. A lot of times I only had one non-engine against Vanadium, for example, and then you just have an Ash and it doesn't really do anything, but that's just variance in my opinion. With 15 cards, with the Bystials together, I think you realistically should draw 2 even in 44. But that's just variance. I think I just got unlucky with that. But that's how it is. 44 cards in the main deck. I wouldn't change a thing. Baldrake and the 2 Noctovisions are the only thing questionable. But Baldrake did put in its worth in my opinion, so I will not be cutting it. So you could get to like 42 very easily with cutting 1 Baldrake and 1 Nocto, but I think they just performed too good. For the extra deck, Striker, Romulus, 2 Seal, definitely mandatory, especially with the Samsara plays coming up, even going first a lot of times. So definitely want you to go for those, especially because we respected Nib, which was not nearly as represented as I thought it would be, but still it did happen a few times that we got Nib, Pisty, Triple Burst, Borderland. Didn't go as often for these as in the past, but that's bound to happen if you go for like a more mid-range approach. You like the chaos spaces, so like the going first line where you go for like Seal and Borderland underneath, I think never came up for me. I just never had the resources to do it or wanted to do it in the first place. Now for generic links, Dark, like I said, we played the Masquerena with the Unicorn, and then the Access Code came up a bunch. Masquerena into Unicorn not as often, but Access Code definitely came up a bunch in Dark as well. And then for Synchros, Savage, Dispater, Baron, and Chaos Angel, no Attomb. I think Attomb is just a win more card, and with only 6 Bystials in the main deck, 9 with Libellion, I think the likelihood that you have 2 Bystials and then go into a Tomb and can win the game off that is pretty low. Even though there aren't a crazy amount of like hand traps which stop the Tomb, I still just don't think it's worth it. And because I had the Samsara line, I always could somehow get into the summon from deck as well, and the Samsara line is just way better because it actually gives us a level 6 with it. So level 6 plus anything out of the deck. Most of the time it was Tracer. Felt good enough, so I didn't really miss the Tomb whatsoever. Now for the side deck. Side deck I was very happy with. Even though I didn't see it a lot, I still think it was a very good call. So we sided 3 draw. This was against all of the crazy combo decks, like with Rika, shoutouts to Julius by the way, winning the YCS. I figured before I was very scared of Rika because I know he's a very good player and I got clapped by him a few times at regionals and locals. So a very good Rika player can be very scary, and I figured a lot of people would go for a combo approach similar to all of the Vanadium pilots. So I really wanted to have Droll in there, and I think everyone had Droll on the side deck because a lot of people had the same fear, so it was definitely very good. Then we have 2 Book of Eclipse. These are my going first sides, but Book of Eclipse, of course, against purely very good, only 2 because of side decking patterns, but this came in going first a lot of times, and these are such high impactful cards going first that like having these plus like a Seal or Masquerena or a Savage is just an auto win against so many decks. I never saw the Book of Eclipse. I sided it in a lot of going first, but I mean, you just don't see it. Then we have 2 Storms. I was scared about backrow decks. It's good against Floowandereeze. It's good against Unchained because you can just out the XYZ. Post side, this is all what I wanted to do. In game 1, having a hand trap against them is really, really solid because similar to against combo decks, having Ash plus a Bystial can be very, very, very good if they don't have a talents. But I didn't want to rely on that because Talent and Thrust punish those plays kind of efficiently. So post side I just forgot that complete and just try to out the XZs and then just push through the board because that's actually kind of easy. And Lightning Storm helps with that as well because you can just go for Lightning Storm their board, and then we can they use their Link 2, engrave, banish it, and get probably the Link 2 to summon back on the board, and then we can go Battle Phase and just out it with a Bystial. And that pushes basically through their whole board. So that was very, very good in theory. We do play the Thrust package together with Herald and Feather Duster. These came in basically every time I went second, at least the Thrust, and then probably the Feather Duster and or 1 Lightning Storm. Just the best card to play going second right now. Being able to search Chaos Space really, really helps when pushing through boards because it is the best push you can just have if your normal summon gets stopped. I was scared a little bit about books, so that's also why I a lot of times sided Feather Duster and Lightning Storm, just because they work so good against opponents non-engine as well. Never happened for me that I like got rid of books with those, but it was solid in theory. And then lastly, 2 Drew's Worm and then 1 Branded Beast. The Branded Beast slot is questionable. I had one slot because I could cut one Book of Eclipse for side decking patterns, so I wanted to have one slot which was decent against Flowonderies when going first, and just playing like a random one of Floodgate didn't really feel worth it. So I figured, okay, Lab is maybe in the format. Branded Beast is still like a very decent engine card and can come up going first, so I just put in the one random Branded Beast, and it was actually performing quite well because I was playing against so much Lab. I never activated it off Lubelling and always just hard drew it. So this is definitely questionable, but it did put in work. I didn't put it in against, I didn't see it against Flowonderies, but I did have access to it against Lab players, so that was pretty decent. Would I still play it? I'm not sure. It's just one side deck slot, and I think putting this one side deck slot towards a card which we can actually go for with our engine, so that we can see it more often, probably feels the best. But overall, this card was mid. The Drew Swarms were insane. Seeing them going second against so many decks feels amazing. So that's it for the list, basically. I still think, even though I did perform not as great, the deck still performed really, really well. It was just one misplay and then just being like on the lower end of the odds, just having like an unlucky day and then adding one misplay to that usually seals the deal quite fast at such a big event like Yu-Gi-Oh! If I was a little more lucky, the one misplay would have been forgiven, but that's in the end. It all happens and it's all fine. Still really, really like the deck. Like I said, I wouldn't change a thing about it. Hope you guys enjoyed today's class. Class is dismissed. You guys are free to leave. Professor Sunreis out. Peace.